In this video, we are going to explore some watercolor techniques, and the first thing we're going to do is put our name on the back of the paper. And then we're going to take our watercolors and we're going to activate them by rehydrating them. So I have my watercolor paints here. I'm just going to take my brush and put it in some water and activate the pigments by hydrating them. A few drops in each pan, and I'm just going to let them sit as I prepare the rest of the paper. So put these off to the side and let them activate the pigment. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take some thin washi tape and I'm going to grid off my paper. Washi tape is really great because it doesn't stick to the paper, so when I'm done I can tear it off and it won't destroy the paper. So like masking tape. So I'm going to put a strip down the middle and then 3 strips across horizontally, and that will make 8 sections for us to do our different techniques in. The first technique we're going to do is called wet on wet. And what that means is wet paint on wet paper. So I have to get my paper wet. I'm just using plain water on my brush, no pigment, and I'm hydrating the paper. And you need to use a little bit more water than you think. Okay, so watercolor is really dependent on the water content. So this kind of want to make a nice puddle, make sure your paper is all shiny. And then you can take your colors and drop them in and watch as they expand and grow, and you can add different colors. You could draw lines, but here I'm just dropping them in, and it's really fun to see how it kind of moves and changes. Here I'm just zooming in a little. The next technique is gradient, and it's a gradual blending from one value to another, either lighter to darker or darker to lighter. So I'm going to take water, just plain water, and put it on my paper like I did before. Then I'm going to add some paint to my brush and just put it on the left side, and then clean my brush off, and just with a water-filled brush kind of drag that paint over to the right, slowly encouraging it to go over to the right. And as it goes over, it kind of dilutes, and you don't want to add any more pigment. You can add a little bit more water, but no more pigment. Kind of just drag it over to the right, and it goes from light to dark. The next one is lifting, and sometimes it's fun to do with a couple different colors, but lifting is just taking off some of the pigment. So I'm kind of adding a few colors, scrumpling up my piece of paper towel and pushing it down to lift off some of the pigment. and this is great for clouds and all sorts of different textures. Dry brush is taking our brush, putting it in the paint, and then drying it off. So taking all of the water content out of it, squeezing it out there until it just has a little bit of pigment but no water, and then kind of scraping it over the surface of and the texture of the paper and getting kind of a scratchy mark. It's really great for some texture and some details in your painting. The next one is the wax resist, and it's where you use a wax crayon or maybe a candle to plug the pores of the paper, and the watercolor will resist the wax. And sometimes people do this when they're making dyeing Easter eggs, right? And so you just want to press hard with your wax crayon, and I'm just going to write wax resist, going over it a couple of times to really embed the wax in the paper. Then I can add my watercolor on top, and if it has trouble resisting, I find that I kind of add a little too much water because I'm used to adding water, and so sometimes I can just wipe some of that water off. You'll see me do that to kind of help it resist. There you go, you can see my wax resist now. Next one is salt, and it's basically to put salt into puddly watercolor. So make sure you have lots of water, and the salt absorbs some of the moisture and it leaves behind some really cool crystally texture, and it kind of just grabs up all of that. There's my salt. It grabs up all of the moisture. So a little will do you. I kind of did a little too much, but you can see it starting to react a little bit and soak up some of the pigment. We will take that off later. Alcohol, it is just putting down again a puddle of water and then dropping in some rubbing alcohol, and it creates this really cool effect. I don't know, they're like kind of bokeh or spotlights. I really love it, and it really looks great with multiple colors, like if you use more than one color in your puddle. Last one is plastic wrap. This is also a great one with multiple colors, although you can use just one color. Putting your colors down, scrunching up the plastic wrap as you put it on. So you put it on and then you scrunch it up like that, and you just let it dry just like that. Okay, so I'm going to come back and show you what it looks like after it's dry. Here it is after it's dry. It looks pretty cool, kind of stained glass. So I'm going to take off my washi tape and label all of them, and then if you're doing this for my class, you're going to label them. Oh, here's where I take off the salt. There you go. And then I'm going to label them with a Sharpie so I know my vocabulary. I'm going to bind it in my book, and I'll use it on my next project.